Welcome to Double Portion Inheritance with Maria Merola and Gary Wold, brought to you by DoublePortionInheritance.com. Since 1981, Maria heard the call of Yahuwah to become a watchman to the house of Yisrael and to those within the traditional Christian church. She was instructed to warn them against the false doctrines and pagan traditions of men. After 25 years of studying Scripture, the word of Yahuwah came to Maria again in 2007 as she was called out of the corporate world to become a full-time intercessor and prophetic teacher. The name of the ministry, Double Portion Inheritance, was given to her after she received the revelation of the two houses of Yisrael from Ezekiel 37:16. The mission of this ministry is to bring together the stick of Judah and the stick of Joseph for the return of the Messiah, Yahushua. And now, Maria Merola.
Welcome to Double Portion Inheritance Ministries. I'm Maria Merola Wold, and the title of this message is The Arrival of Antichrist on December 21st, 2020. Now, the reason I did this blog is because there's so many people right now that are, squabbling about who the final end time beast is, who is the Antichrist, right? So we know that our Messiah said there would be many Antichrists in the last days. He said in Matthew 24:24 that there would be many false messiahs and false prophets. So it's not just one single Antichrist leader, but I do believe that the Bible describes one person who fits into that role called the little horn and the man of sin, the son of perdition, the one who builds the temple. The Jewish people tell us that when the one who comes and builds the temple, they say that's the Messiah. So if they've already slated Donald Trump to build the temple, that's why they're calling him the Messiah. That's why so many Jewish people are calling Donald Trump the Messiah, including Jonathan Cahn, who's supposed to be messianic. And it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. And I've actually talked to certain believers, or, they say they're believers in Yahushua as the Messiah, but they're actually calling Trump a type of Messiah, a type of, Mashiach, because they say he's going to build the temple. Beloved, this is a great deception. But there's also people that think that Obama's coming back and that he's going to be the false Messiah, right? And I don't see that, okay? So I want to share with you why in the New Age and in the occult world, they decided that December 21st, 2020 was supposed to be the arrival or the reincarnation in the occult world of the quote-unquote Antichrist. On December 21st, 2020, there was a counterfeit star of Bethlehem, and that marked the arrival of the world ruler, the final anti-Messiah, the final Antichrist. Leading up to this event, all the major news media outlets on television, on the internet, magazines were claiming that the conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn on December 21st, 2020, was the original Star of Bethlehem that was supposedly seen on the night our Messiah, Yahushua, was born. However, nothing could be further from the truth, and I will shed some light on this historical phenomenon. So I just want to give a disclaimer, because every time I talk about this subject, there's always going to be people who say, oh, you're getting into astrology. That's an abomination. So I want to share with you that there is a difference between astronomy and astrology. And I have a blog called, Is There a Difference Between Astronomy and Astrology? And we are told in Genesis 1:14 that Yahuwah has given us lights in the firmament of heaven. That is the moon, the sun, and the stars for times and for seasons. So we are to use these lights in the firmament for telling time. In fact, the wise men watched for the star, the Star of David. They call it the Star of Bethlehem. That's what guided them to where the Messiah would be born. But then there's those people who use astrology for fortune telling. And of course, that's an abomination. We are told in Deuteronomy 18 that we are not to use the stars for fortune telling and be an observer of times, meaning astrology. We're not supposed to be using it for personal fortune telling. So Context is important. Yahuwah has given us the astronomical signs for prophetic events, but we're not to use them for our own personal fortune telling. Okay. We're told that this is an abomination. Okay. Now, there's an author who wrote this book. His name is Tim Huckabee. Okay. His mother's maiden name is Cohen, so he uses the name Timothy Cohen. And he wrote this book in 1998 called Antichrist and a Cup of Tea. And lately I've been bombarded with people who have written to me asking me to read the book. Now, I read it way back. We're talking probably 1999 or maybe the year 2000, but I gave it to somebody. I loaned it to somebody. I never got the book back. But of course, I've been pondering this. But, it was like in March of 2020, March 21st, 2020 to be exact, I wasn't really even aware of what was going on with the scamdemic. I was just so out of touch with what was going on with that. But I got a wake-up call that day because the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, just spoke to me in such a profound way. I wasn't even in prayer. I was just washing my dishes when all of a sudden I felt his presence come over me, and he said, Maria, go look up the meaning of the word corona and look up the meaning of the word virus. And he said, and I want you to go read Revelation 6:2. And when I did that, I was absolutely stunned because this came in a time when I was least expecting it. But this is what he showed me. And as I was looking this up, it said, and I saw and behold a white horse. Now, previous to this, I'd always thought that the rider on the white horse in Revelation 6:2 was an imposter to the real Messiah. Of course, the real Messiah in Revelation 19 comes back on a white horse. But the false Messiah is only given one crown, but the real Messiah is given many crowns. And this guy is given a crown, but he's also given a bow. And so I went and looked up this word for bow. And I was surprised to find out that the word bow is toxon. And so I did an etymological search on this word, like what does this word mean? And I found out that in ancient times, they would take arrows and dip them in poison. And so this word toxon developed into this word toxicon or toxicum, which is where we get the Latin word toxins or poisons. And so the false Messiah would go forth conquering, and that means to subdue the people of the earth, to enslave them. And he showed me as I was reading it that President Donald Trump is the rider on the white horse. And I was stunned. I was absolutely stunned. And he showed me this on March 21st, 2020. And he said to me that he was going to be the one that was going to develop the poisoned bow and arrow. The poisoned bow and arrow. Okay, so I'd like to show you this coat of arms. This is the coat of arms that originally belonged to the family at Mar-a-Lago when Donald Trump purchased the property. As you can see, it says Mar-a-Lago on the bottom. Now, he ended up going to court and he managed to get the name changed on this coat of arms to say Trump instead of Mar-a-Lago. So, as you can see, I made this graphic here. Trump coat of arms from the 13th Illuminati bloodline of Merovingians, the tribe of Dan. You see, Trump's mother, Mary MacLeod, was a Scottish Jew, according to historian Yar Davidi. I used to interview Yar Davidi on Hebrew Nation Radio years ago. He knows where all 12 tribes migrated to, and he's actually an expert in this field. So this is confirmed. Trump's mother, Mary MacLeod, is a Scottish Jew, and she's from the tribe of Dan. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about the tribe of Dan. So in this image, you can see a hand grasping an arrow. And I find that awfully interesting in light of the fact that Revelation 6:2 says the rider on the white horse has a bow, is given a bow. And of course, this is an arrow by itself without the bow. But when you look up the word in Greek, toxon, it can mean either or. It can mean the bow itself, or it can mean the arrow. Okay. And, as I said, when I looked up the etymological search on this, it means poisonous bow and arrows. The tribe of Dan are known to be warriors. In fact, the name Dan, which is pronounced in Hebrew dawn, like the early morning dawn, it's pronounced more like dawn, but it means judge. And then you can see the 3 lions here. Well, I'm going to speculate as to what I think these 3 lions mean. There are 3 power structures in the world. There's London, which is run by the Rothschilds. London is where the headquarters of finance of the world takes place. And number 2, Rome, Vatican City, the headquarters of religion. And number 3, Washington, D.C., the military headquarters. So I'm going to show you this right here. This is called the Roman Power Pyramid. You see Vatican City here, UN, New World Order, Agenda 2030. Here, City of London, Wall Street, money and finance, Rothschild banking. And here you see Washington, D.C., City of Jerusalem. They're calling it the City of Jerusalem because, America, the United States of America, has been an ally to the nation of Israel. And as of recently, President Trump in 2017 moved the American embassy to Jerusalem and made Jerusalem the capital city of Israel. So there is this coming together of Washington, D.C. and Jerusalem. And as you can see, it says war and terror, Zionist government. And then in this pyramid, you see Jesuits, Illuminati, Knights Templar, Knights of Malta, 32nd degree plus Freemasons, meaning 32nd degree plus 33rd degree, right? Organized religion, secret services and societies, military police, mafia, the UN, the US, the EU, the G20, NATO, big bank, big media, big industry, national, regional, and local politics, NGOs, think tanks, big charities. So all of these organizations fall under this umbrella. So that's what I'm guessing these 3 lions mean. 23 shields. I counted these, they look like little shields, little diamonds, and they've got little crosses on top. 23 shields with crosses. I believe 13 of them represent the Illuminati families. There's 13 Illuminati families. The other 10 represent the 10 horns on the beast. Once again, I'm speculating. I don't know if that's really what it means, but I am guessing that that's what it could mean. Now, these chevrons, I know what these mean. They talked about it in the Da Vinci Code movie. Whenever you see this type of symbol, the chevron, facing downward like this, it's the masculine divine. If it's an upside down, inverted, V symbol, then it represents the feminine divine. The feminine divine. The 2 chevrons, the more chevrons that a person has on their coat of arms, the higher they are in rank. So there are 2 chevrons, which I believe represents the second beast on Revelation 13:11. That's America. America would be the second beast. Trump is the little horn of Daniel 7 through 11. Mar-a-Lago in Spanish means from sea to lake. I find that interesting. You see the word lake as a verb, according to the dictionary, means to cause blood to undergo a change in which the hemoglobin becomes dissolved in the plasma. And as you can see, Revelation 13:1 and also Revelation 13:11 says the beast rises up from the sea. That's the first beast. And then the second beast comes up from the earth. Okay, so now I want to show you Trump's he has another coat of arms, and it's Trump's International Golf Club of Scotland coat of arms. And at the top, it says, never concede. And you see, that's very fitting because on January 6, 2021, he wouldn't concede. And that's his motto. Never concede. Never give up. He says that all the time. Never give up. The Lion King, you see the lion here. The name Donald means world ruler in Scottish or Gaelic. And you see he's got the spear. The lion is holding the spear. We'll talk about that more in a minute. And this one has 3 chevrons. 3 chevrons means a higher rank than the 2 chevrons. And once again, I believe the 3 chevrons have to do with London, finance, Rome, religion, District of Columbia, military. And now you see the 2-headed eagle, the Holy Roman Empire. The two-headed eagle represents the 2-headed eagle. Now, the spear, what does that mean? I found some interesting thing about the spear. At encyclopedia.com, Spear of Destiny, a legendary Christian relic, the Spear of Longinus, identified in folklore with the spear that pierced the side of Christ. John 1934, nearly 2,000 years ago, occult legend states that whoever claims this spear and understands its occult significance holds the destiny of the world in his hands. Wow, that says a lot. The fact that there's this spear on on Trump's Scottish coat of arms, that's pretty telling. According to Houston Stewart Chamberlain, British-born propagandist for anti-Semitism and the German philosophy of an Aryan master race, this spear was claimed by Constantine the Great, Justinian, Charles Martel, Charlemagne, and various German emperors, all men of destiny. Well, we know that Trump is German, and we know that Trump is also a type of Charlemagne. So I can see how this spear on his Scottish, coat of arms has a lot of prophetic significance. Before World War II, the Spear of Destiny, more properly known as the Maurice Spear, was exhibited in the Hofburg Museum in Vienna. It attracted the attention of the young Adolf Hitler, who linked it with legends of the Holy Grail. Now, for those of you who don't know, I have another teaching about Trump's Merovingian bloodline, and I talk about the fact that in the Da Vinci Code movie, they hint about Trump's mother, Mary McLeod, and they don't, mention her name. They don't talk about her, but there is a portrait of her up on the wall as they're demonstrating the Last Supper painting. I picked it out right away. The Holy Grail, they refer to the Holy Grail as the womb of Mary Magdalene. They call it the chalice. And so, there's these people, the Merovingians actually believe this, and of course it's nonsense, but this is what they believe. They believe Jesus and Mary Magdalene were married to each other, and they had a child together. And so they believe that the womb of Mary Magdalene is holy. So they refer to her womb as the Holy Grail. And they believe there are all these descendants in Europe who carry the direct bloodline of Christ and Mary Magdalene. And the Trump family believes they are from that direct bloodline. Okay, so, this is really interesting. It says that this spear attracted the attention of young Adolf Hitler, who linked it with legends of the Holy Grail and made his own plans to be a man of destiny. Well, we all know Trump had books about Hitler, especially his book Mein Kampf, which means my struggle. His ex-wife, Ivana Trump, wrote in her memoirs that he kept these books on his nightstand and he would read them at night before bed. He had great admiration for Adolf Hitler. And so the spear held a special fascination for Hitler and his associates in the hothouse atmosphere of occultism and evil philosophies that gave rise to the Nazi plan for world domination. In 1935, Heinrich Himmler had a replica of the spear made and kept it in his private room. 3 years later, Hitler led his troops into Austria, the first stage of his plan for world conquest. One of his first acts was to remove the Spear of Destiny from the Hofburg Museum. Wow, the plot thickens with this spear. The spear was buried beneath the Nuremberg fortress, where it was discovered on the day that Hitler shot himself in the Berlin bunker on April 30th, 1945. Now, of course, we've all heard that Hitler actually didn't die, that he actually fled to Argentina, and he lived out the remainder of his days. We'll never know. But it was recovered together with other treasure of the imperial collection on January 6th. Oh, January 6th, 1946. Wow. Isn't that interesting? On January 6th, 1946. See, 1946 was the year that Donald Trump was born. And also, he, had that, incident at the Capitol Dome on January 6th. On January 6, 1946, these treasures were returned to the authorities at Vienna, and the spear was reinstated in the Hofburg Museum. Wow. Very interesting. Trevor Ravenscroft has compiled an exhaustive account of the history of the spear. The manner in which it influenced Hitler was integral to the occult philosophy that permeated the upper echelons of the Nazi movement and affected the actual events of World War II. Ravenscroft drew much of his unique research information from Walter Johannes Stein, 1891 through 1957, who knew Hitler as a young man and saw Hitler's books concerned with occultism and the Grail legends, with copious manuscript notes by Hitler himself indicating the beginnings of his Nazi philosophy. So, wow, that is really deep stuff here. So now we understand what Trump's coat of arms actually means with this spear. Okay. And so, these coat of arms, these two coat of arms are just chock full of occult meaning. So I think it's interesting that the rider on the white horse goes forth conquering, and this spear says a lot about the one who will become the world ruler, the one who will mimic Hitler, who will mimic Charlemagne. It's pretty fascinating. Now, let's go back to the blog. So, to be fair, I did read the book and I did see all the evidences that Timothy Huckabee presents. However, there are many things that do not align with King Charles III fulfilling the role of the little horn from the book of Daniel. And neither does he fulfill the role of the Assyrian that was prophesied about by Isaiah and Micah. So I've got another blog here comparing Donald Trump to King Charles III. I know a lot of people are saying it's Charles, but I've got lots of reasons to believe it's not Charles. To those who are claiming that King Charles is the Antichrist, you were not paying attention on December 21st, 2020, when the New Agers, the Luciferians, and the occultists announced that their false Messiah had arrived. So you see, on December 21st, 2020, the winter solstice, the news media announced the Star of Bethlehem made its appearance for the first time in 800 years. However, this was a counterfeit of the Star of Bethlehem because, you see, the conjunction was between the planet Jupiter and the planet Saturn. That's not the same conjunction that was seen the night our Messiah was born. Okay, see, the real Messiah, Yahushua, who many call Jesus, was born under the real Star of Bethlehem on the Feast of Trumpets. And this was on the first day of the 7th Hebrew month called Etanim or Tishri. It was in the year 3 BC. This happened to land on the Julian calendar, the date September the 11th in 3 BC. Now, so our Messiah's birth took place on a conjunction of Venus and Jupiter, not Saturn and Jupiter, okay? Venus in the Hebrew is called Hamalek, the king. And Jupiter in Hebrew is called Hadzadik, the righteous. These two planets in conjunction, Venus and Jupiter, form the name King of Righteousness. In other words, Melchizedek. So you see, All the evidence for our Messiah's true date of birth are at this blog that I've written. And I first started my studies on when the Messiah was born back in 2001, actually right after the events of 9/11. And the first book I read was called The Star That Astonished the World by Ernest L. Martin. And not only his research, but I did so much more research beyond what he did. And I can absolutely show beyond a shadow of a doubt that is when our Messiah was born. And here we have the constellation that was visible that night. It was Betula, which is the Virgin. Then the first crescent moon, the sliver, was underneath her feet. It was on the Feast of Trumpets. She was giving birth to the lion, Ariel. And inside the lion was the conjunction of Jupiter and Venus. In other words, the righteous king, Hazadik, is Jupiter, and Hamalek is the king, Venus. These two planets were in conjunction. Okay, so the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter was not the same one as the one that was seen on the night of our Messiah's birth. But December 21st, 2020 is when President Donald Trump announced that his deadly snake bite was a great Christmas miracle. That's what he was calling it. He was calling it a great Christmas miracle. Another thing that took place on December 21st, 2020 is that Trump was voted by the Gallup poll the most admired man. The most admired man. In fact, leading up to that date, prior to that, it was Obama who was chosen the most admired man for I think it was 10 years in a row. But Trump beat him that year. Okay. And in Revelation 13:3, it says, "And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wandered after the beast." Well, this word "wandered" is the Greek word thaumazo, which means to be admired. Okay? Now, Trump losing the election to Biden was a political deadly wound, but this was done on purpose. You see, the whole entire thing of Biden winning over Trump is a psychological operation. They're doing this on purpose. And I'm going to explain more as we proceed. But they are doing this because they have chosen him. When I say they, I'm talking about the global elites. I'm talking about the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the global elites. The beast that was and is not and yet is. So they're doing this on purpose to make it so that Trump is the beast that was and is not and yet is, according to Revelation 17:8. In fact, in Revelation 13:3, the word for wound is plague. And we know that Trump and his family supposedly contracted the plague. It was in October 2020, the CV, and he recovered from it after 3 days, supposedly, right? Now, this is really interesting. I made this graphic here. You see on the cover of Time magazine, this is from August of 2020. It says the plague election. And you see Trump is swimming in these waters. And there you see off in the distance the White House and these little balls floating around, which we know these are the pathogens that they were displaying for the virus. Okay, now look at this. Mar-a-Lago in Spanish means from sea to lake. Revelation 13:1 says the beast rises up from the sea. The word lake as a verb, according to Merriam-Webster, means to cause blood to undergo a change in which the hemoglobin becomes dissolved in the plasma. Well, Revelation 17:5 says the waters which you saw, where the horse sits, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. Revelation 13:3 says, and his deadly wound, in other words, the plague, the CV, was healed. Now, this is something that Donald Trump Jr. posted on the day of October the 5th, 2020. Well, first Trump posted this, "My blood is the V," but it got taken down rather quickly. Now, a lot of people doubt the fact that he actually tweeted this. They say it's fake. But here's proof that he did tweet this, because his son tweeted the same thing on the same day. He says, imagine this. Trump gets all better and donates his plasma to develop a corona treatment. And then all the liberals have to get the V with Trump's blood. Okay, and you see a person getting the V. Okay, so we know that in April of 2021, Trump was calling himself the father of the V, and even called it a beautiful V. Okay, the beast from the sea has caused multitudes of people and nations to have their blood changed because he's the father of the V. So it's interesting that this word Mar-a-Lago means from sea to lake, and the word lake as a verb in Spanish, lago, means to cause the blood to undergo a change in which the hemoglobin becomes dissolved in the plasma. All right, so in light of these events, that is awfully interesting. Now, Trump recovered from this within 3 days. This was between October 2nd through the 5th in 2020. And his son, Don Jr., both of them tweeted that his blood would be used for the V research because it supposedly had miraculous healing powers. Revelation 13:14 says, and he deceives them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles, which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound or the plague by a sword and did live. The Greek word for sword in the above passage is makira, which means judicial punishment. Now, at that time, Trump had already survived one impeachment attempt, and he overcame that. Then he survived a second impeachment attempt. Now he's going through further judicial punishment. But see, I believe all of this has been contrived. When I studied about the tactics of the Illuminati and the Jesuits of Rome, this was from the time I was a 14-year-old kid reading about the Alberto story in the Jack Chick's publication. I read that the Illuminati plan these events 50 years in advance. They have a game plan and they roll it out just like a movie script. Okay, so they've been planning. They have chosen Trump probably before he was even born. They probably chose the Trump family. They probably chose the date he would be born on. They probably planned the pregnancy. They planned that he would be born under a blood red moon and that it would be a total lunar eclipse. They planned everything. They even planned what college he would go to. They are so meticulous in the Illuminati, how they plan these things. That's why when Trump says, I am the chosen one, he means that, yes, he's been chosen by the global elites to fulfill this end time prophecy, to be the man of sin. Okay. So in 2020, Trump had already recovered from 2 impeachments, and now I believe he's going to recover from these indictment charges. Now, doesn't mean he won't go to jail. He probably will go to jail. We'll see. But it has to make him look like the poor, persecuted Messiah. And we know that our Messiah was falsely accused of insurrection. So now they've got to make it look like Trump is being falsely accused of insurrection. That's how they got to make him look like the real Messiah. Okay? So when it says that the beast recovers from a sword, and that word sword, makira, literally means judicial punishment, and also he recovered from a wound, that was the plague, right? Now we have him doing miracles and people being deceived by those miracles. Lying signs and wonders, we're told in 2 Thessalonians, that he does lying signs and wonders. In other words, it's a psychological operation. It's a psyop. It's not real. They're playing out these things as black magic spells, and people are buying into it. Okay, so I believe Trump will recover from this deadly wound to his political career, that he will survive the sword, the judicial punishment. And I don't know exactly how he's going to survive, but just as of August 18th, the news media just announced that he has 10 days to turn himself in for the Capitol Dome insurrection on January the 6th. And I believe Trump will definitely turn himself in. In fact, he probably is reveling in the whole thing because this is what's going to make all the conservatives and all the, the MAGA people go crazy. And what they want is order out of chaos. They want there to be rioting in the streets. They want there to be chaos so they can clamp down on everybody and introduce martial law. Okay? So here I've got a blog called The Terminal Predicted Trump's Indictment. That's a movie that was done with Tom Hanks. And I was just stunned at how many things I picked up on predictive programming about how this movie kind of predicted Trump's indictment. Also, there's another one. Is he a persecuted Messiah or a Barabbas scapegoat? Now, somebody that is so sick did a painting of Trump dying on a cross, and you have Nancy Pelosi putting a spear in his side. And you got all these people in the background like Kim Jong-un and Putin and, all these political leaders. And then there's this other one called Trump's Rise to Power, foretold in Megamind. And this film really does a great job telling us everything they had planned ahead of time. And I picked up on a lot of things from it when I first watched it in 2015. When Gary's teenage daughters came to visit, we were looking for something fun to watch with the teenage kids, and we watched this. And I picked up on some things then, but then I went back and watched it again in 2020 during the scamdemic, and I picked up a whole lot more the second time I watched it. And I said, okay, I know what this is telling us. Trump is the one who's going to wear the orange suit. They call him Orange Man. And it's because he wears that orange, fake tanning stuff on his face. But actually, I discovered there's another reason why they call him Orange Man. I like to use this website called antichristcalculator.com because they have 10 different calculation methods of Gematria. Now, people will try to say that Gematria is witchcraft. No, it's not. Gematria is a Greek word that means geometry. Okay, so geometry is something we use every day. When you bake a cake, you're using geometry. When you build a deck off the back of your house, you're using geometry. If you're sewing a dress, you're using geometry. So to say that that's witchcraft, that's not accurate. Now, can you use gematria for fortune-telling purposes to try to predict your own forecast or your own future, or to go play the lottery and try to figure out what lucky numbers that you can use to win? Yeah, sure, you can use it that way, of course. But we are commanded to count the number of the beast, are we not? I mean, it tells us in Revelation 13 to count the number of the beast. So it's not an option. He didn't say, well, if you feel like it. He said, let him that has wisdom count the number of the beast.
Or let him who is dull not count. But it's either or, right?
But the Greek word for count is sephizo, and it means to compute. It actually means to compute. And what's interesting is that we now have this language that is called computer ASCII code. And here it is. We've got two methods here, ASCII uppercase, ASCII lowercase. So this website has 10 different methods of calculating, and it searches a database until it finds a match for 666. Whereas all these other websites, all they do is they do English gematria only, or they do Greek gematria only, or Jewish gematria only, or something like that. I like to use this one because it searches 10 different methods. So, orange, the word orange is 33. And see, that's a number that they like to use in the Illuminati, because when you're at the 33rd degree of Freemasonry, they use that number because they know our Messiah was 33 years old when he died. But also, there's another reason for it. 3 times 11 is 33. And 11 is a number that falls short of 12 because, there was 12 apostles, but the 12th one, Judas, betrayed the Messiah and hung himself. So that left only 11 apostles. So there's lots of reasons why they like to use these kind of numbers. But Orange Man also adds up to 33. So there's a reason why they call him Orange Man, okay? And it's not what we would think. But in this movie, Megamind is in jail and he's wearing an orange jumpsuit. But get this. His little sidekick called Minion, which I believe his sidekick Minion stands for Dominion, like the Dominion voting machines, right? His little sidekick Minion sends him a watch while he's in jail. The watch is called a hollow watch. And basically, this watch does something that's like deep fake. You can scan an image of somebody, and then you can project that image onto yourself. And that's what Megamind did. He left the prison looking just like the warden, and that's how he escaped prison. Okay, so what I think they told us in this film, they told us the whole plan with Megamind. Okay, they told us the whole plan. I'm not going to go through the whole blog, but I recommend that you go watch the video. I have it up on, I don't know if I have it on YouTube anymore, but I do have it on Rumble. I have it on Vimeo, and I have it up on Odyssey. Okay. And so it's very fascinating how much they told us in this movie. Here's a scene in the movie where Gary found it. He pointed it out. There was the Ark of the Covenant was seen there in the Oval Office where Megamind's, he's at the Oval Office like the President of the United States, and he's got all this wealth and riches, including the Ark of the Covenant. And Gary said, look, it's the Ark of the Covenant. I said, oh my goodness, they're hinting about Trump because Trump's the one who's been slated to build the third temple. So there's more to it than that. I'm not going to get into the whole thing because it's just too lengthy. But there's a scene in the movie where Roxanne Ritchie, she represents the news media. She's a news reporter. And she's at the Metro Man Museum, and she runs into the custodian. And the custodian, she says, your name's Barry. Oh, you scared me. Barry, right? She thought his name was Barry. Now, that wasn't just a random thing. They were hinting at Obama. Obama was born Barry Soetoro, okay? So she says, Barry, right? And he says, no, my name is Bernard. Well, there's a reason why his name is Bernard. And I'll explain in a minute. Okay, so in the movie, they showed us this graphic. You can't, right? Well, we know that Obama's slogan was, yes, we can. Well, why did they keep showing us this graphic, no, you can't? Because everybody thinks Obama's coming back into office. And I think that this graphic is showing, no, you can't, Barry. You can't come back. You're not coming back. Okay? That's what I think they were telling us. Okay, so this book called Draining the Swamp is written by this guy named Harvey Francis Bernard. It's called the NESARA story. In this movie, when she said Barry, right? He says, no, not Barry, Bernard. What they're telling us is Obama's not the one that's coming back. It's the guy who's following this book, Draining the Swamp. Okay, that's Trump. Okay, so the NESARA story is all about how he's going to come back and he's going to do away with the IRS. He's going to bring back the gold standard. It's going to look really good. Everybody's going to just be like so in awe. But there's going to be a caveat. The only way you're going to be able to participate in the NESARA Act is you're going to have to worship the beast and his image. And you're going to have to take his mark. Okay? Now, there's a scene in the movie where Roxanne Ritchie and this guy, this is Megamind, but, he's under disguise. He looks just like Bernard. Okay? They're talking about creating a superhero. And he says, with just a smidgen of DNA, and he's looking at a giant image of DNA. And at the same time that Roxanne says, if only the world had a reset button. And at the same moment that she says that if the world had a reset button, you see the number 45 on the elevator door. And, it went by so fast, I could barely capture an image of it with my cell phone. But I thought it was interesting that at the same moment that she says, I just wish the world had a reset button, that's when number 45 shows up. And so I even thought for these last 3 years, I wonder if there's not even going to be another election. Maybe they're going to find out about the election fraud. But see, even the election fraud is contrived, right? Because I don't believe we've had a legitimate election since Abraham Lincoln. Ever since 1871, our country's been sold off to the foreign bankers. And so we haven't had a legitimate election probably since 1871. Our presidents are not elected. They are selected. They're selected by the global bankers. Our Constitution has been suspended ever since March 13th, 2020, when President Trump called the national state of emergency. And whenever there is a national state of emergency, the Constitution is suspended, which, as far as I'm concerned, I think there's probably not going to be another election. It's possible that there won't be a 2024 election and that Trump will just step right back in as number 45 and that he'll bring in a dictatorship. Not what everybody was hoping for. All right. And so here is Minion, his little, sidekick that looks like a fish with like these sharp little razor teeth, and he's inside of a fish bowl. And Minion's the one that helped Megamind escape from jail. Well, I believe it's possible that Minion could be standing for Dominion voting machines. Maybe they have plans now that they've indicted Trump. His lawyers are saying, we have subpoena power now. Now, they were previously not willing to look at the evidence of the elections from 2020. They were previously not willing to look at the voter fraud, but now he has subpoena power. And now that he has subpoena power, they're going to bring out all the evidence. And that evidence is going to mean that it's possible Trump will step right back in as though he never left as number 45. Maybe. I'm guessing. I'm not saying for sure, but I can see that as a viable option. Okay? Here's the NESARA Act. I'm going to read this to you. NESARA stands for National Economic Security and Reformation Act. It was passed in March of 2000. It was signed into law in October of 2000. And it says it forgives credit card, mortgage, and other bank debts due to illegal banking and government activities. It abolishes the IRS. It abolishes income tax, creates flat rate, non-essential, new items only sales tax revenue for government, increases benefits to senior citizens, returns to constitutional law, establishes new presidential and congressional elections within 120 days after NESARA's announcement, monitors elections and prevents illegal election activities or special interest groups. Now, how do you think they're going to be able to monitor elections? Think about this. If people take a chip under their skin, you can't have voter fraud anymore, right? You can't use a fake ballot, a mail-in ballot, or anything like that, because the chip will solve all of that. Because you vote with the chip in your hand, right? It creates new U.S. Treasury currency, rainbow currency, backed by gold, silver, and platinum, precious metals, returns constitutional law to all our courts and legal matters, initiates new U.S. Treasury bank system in alignment with constitutional law, eliminates the Federal Reserve System, restores financial privacy, restrains all judges and attorneys in constitutional law, ceases all aggressive U.S. government military actions worldwide, establishes peace throughout the world, initiates first phase of worldwide prosperity distribution of vast wealth, which has been accumulating for many decades, releases enormous sums of money for humanitarian purposes, enables the release of new technologies such as alternative energy devices. Doesn't this sound awfully similar to a year of Jubilee? You see, before the real Messiah comes and brings in a year of Jubilee, the false Messiah is going to bring in a year of Jubilee. And so many people are going to be deceived by it. Whatever you do, don't be deceived. Okay? Now, this is what the conjunction of December 21st, 2020 was all about. Okay, now once again, I don't follow my astrological forecast. I'm not using astrology for forecasting my future. But what I'm looking at is what these constellations are telling us about the false Messiah. Okay, Sagittarius started November 22nd and it ended December 21st. You can see a man who's a half horse, white horse, and a man with a bow, a poisoned bow and arrow. See, the date of December 21st is exactly when Trump rolled out the V. I mean, there was a few people that took it prior to that. I think it was December 14th or 15th. But December 21st is when he tweeted and called it a great Christmas miracle. Revelation 6:2 says, and I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Well, the crown was when he went to visit Pope Francis at the Vatican in May of 2017. You see, every pope has a triple crown tiara placed on him when he takes the office of a pope. The Vatican City is a sovereign country all by itself, separate from Italy. The Vatican City has their own national flag, separate from the flag of Italy. And Pope Francis gave him the climate change encyclical, and Trump accepted it. Well, what is climate change encyclical? Climate change is just code for depopulation. That's what it is. It's code for depopulation. Most people didn't even notice that this happened. It just went right over most people's heads. Okay. But this is actually what happened on May 24th, 2017. I made this graphic. The Roman papal beast always has his front man doing his dirty work for him. So here you have Trump having a private audience with the Pope. And by private, I don't mean that there aren't other people in the room. It just means he gets to have a face-to-face, meeting with him, right? And I read in Alberto Rivera's story, when he was being briefed at the Vatican as a Jesuit, he said, nobody is granted this type of an audience with a Pope unless they acknowledge that the Pope is the visible image of Jesus Christ on earth. So that means that every U.S. president who goes to the Vatican and gets one of these types of audiences with a Pope, he's already bowed to the beast. He's already accepted that this guy right here is supposedly a substitute for Jesus Christ on earth. Well, the title substitute for Christ in Latin is Vicarius Filii Dei. Vicarius Filii Dei literally is 666. That's what it is, 666. So you see, every Pope, when he is crowned, he receives this triple crown tiara on his head, and it says Vicarius Filii Dei, substitute for the Son of God. The word anti in Greek, as in the word Antichrist, is substitute. Antichrist equals substitute for Christ. Vicarius is substitute. Filii is son, and Dei is God. So these three terms, Vicarius Filii Dei, substitute for the Son of God, has a numerical value of 666. Revelation 13:1, and I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. So now we know what the name of blasphemy is. Vicarius Filii Dei, the beast with the names of blasphemy upon his heads. Every pope is given this title, Vicarius Filii Dei. Now, the fact that Trump was at the Vatican meeting with the Antichrist Pope, because every Pope is an Antichrist. Every Pope claims he's the substitute for Christ. This means that Trump acknowledged him, Pope Francis, as the substitute for Christ. He even said it on Twitter. He called Pope Francis His Holiness. May 24th, 2007, Pope Francis presented President Trump with a copy of his encyclical on climate change, aka Depopulation Agenda, to reduce the world's population down 95% to only 5% of the current population by 2030. This is called Agenda 2021, which is code for Operation Warp Speed. Now, this is awfully similar to what happened on July 21st, 1933, when Pope Pius XII met with Adolf Hitler to sign the Reichsconcordat Act, which would give Hitler free rein to annihilate Jews in Germany, thus giving rise to a Jewish state for the end-time papal beast to rule in Jerusalem. Hitler annihilated 6 million Jews in Nazi prison camps. You see the pattern here. Now, we know that Trump's ex-wife, former wife, Ivana Trump, wrote in her memoirs that Trump used to keep a copy of Hitler's speeches and Hitler's books on his nightstand. And he used to often read Hitler's books before he went to bed. And he had great admiration for Hitler. So I can totally see how Trump would definitely come back as another Hitler and bring this country under a dictatorship. So on December 21st, when Trump announced that his shot was a great Christmas miracle, that was exactly under the sign of the man with the half man, half white horse, Sagittarius, with the poisoned bow and arrow. Okay. But also, January 19th was Trump's last day in office, and that was under the astrological sign of Capricorn. Now, Revelation 13:11 describes the goats. Okay, the goat, I believe, is describing America. It says, "And I beheld another beast coming out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke like a dragon." Well, America's a 2-party system. And America is the image of the original beast, which is Rome. Rome is the original papal beast in Revelation 13:1. But America is an image of the original papal beast. And also, America is very similar to Imperial Rome, because Imperial Rome was both a democracy and a republic. Well, the 2 horns on this beast, I believe, represent the 2-party system. Because how did they anoint kings in ancient times? They would take an animal horn filled with oil, and they would pour the oil on the head of the guy that was being anointed as the next king. So a horn always represents in prophecy political power. So the fact that this goat has 2 horns on his head, I believe this is describing America, because when our Messiah separates the sheep from the goats, the sheep are the legitimate believers. The goats are the ones who pretend to be true believers, but they have 2 horns on their head because they are under the beast system. They're following the beast system. They're voting for one of those 2 candidates from either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. They've fallen prey to the Hegelian dialectic. Well, we're told not to take a vow. Our Messiah told us, do not swear, neither by heaven nor by earth. Well, guess what? The word vote means to take a solemn vow. That's literally what the word vote means. So if you're voting, you're taking a vow to somebody who is following after the beast. So Trump's last day in office, January 19th, is when I believe that Capricorn the goat, representing America, has started to come into its role as the 2-horned beast. Okay. And I'm going to show you that I believe Trump never actually left office. Now, I believe he's been running things from Mar-a-Lago because he's been in the news media more than anybody. We hardly ever see Biden in the news, do we? The person who's dominating the news media for these last 7 years Who's it been? It's been Trump. Trump's the one who's making all the money from all the news media outlets. He's making them so much money. Okay, so why would all of a sudden they bring out Obama? Obama's not making them money. Who's the one that is dominating the news media? It's Trump. Okay, so when you examine the graphic, you'll notice that Sagittarius pictures the rider on the white horse of Revelation 6:2. Okay, and he goes forth conquering the world with a poisoned bow and arrow. Okay. Why is this significant? Well, on March 21st, 2020, like I said, I heard the voice of my shepherd say to me, Maria, go look up the meaning of corona and then look up the meaning of the V word in Latin. Latin is the language of the beast. Then he instructed me to read Revelation 6:2. And now with my new understanding, I saw Revelation 6:2 in a different light. And he said to me, President Trump is the rider on the white horse. Now, what I did not realize at that time was that many others had been portraying Trump as a rider on the white horse in cartoon caricatures and in parade floats. Even Trump portrayed himself as the rider on the white horse in his recent NFT cards. You know, he has these NFT cards made and he's got his own name trademarked on them. That means he's making millions of dollars on these NFT cards. Here we have an artist who depicted Trump looking like Napoleon riding a white horse. There was a parade float in Georgia where Trump is riding a white horse. Okay, so we've got lots of images portraying Trump on a white horse. So after doing a careful study of the word crown and bow, I learned that the Greek word for crown is Stephanos, but in Latin, it's corona. Doing the etymological search on this word bow, I discovered that it means to dip arrows into poison and to shoot your victim with a bow. It later developed into the Latin word toxin, which means poison. Then I looked up the meaning of this word virus in Latin, and it also means poison. So I started to see Revelation 6:2 in a different way. That the guy that rides the white horse is the same guy that developed the poisonous bow and arrow and calls himself the father of the V and said it's a great Christmas miracle. And when did he say this? On December 21st, 2020, on the same day that the news media said it was the Star of Bethlehem, it was the Great Conjunction. The Great Christmas Miracle is what they were calling it. Okay, so back in March of 2020, when Yahuwah was showing this to me, that's when I remembered this meeting that Trump had with Pope Francis and that he accepted the climate change encyclical, which is just code, another name for depopulation. It was in that moment that Yahuwah showed me just exactly who Trump is, that he would be the one to develop the V, and that the V would wipe out a fourth part of the Earth's population. As I kept reading, I went down to Revelation 6:8, and it says, And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with the sword and with hunger and with death and with the beasts of the earth. And then looking up the Greek word for pale, it's chloros, which means greenish, green and pale. Well, the root word is Chloe, like the female name Chloe, right? And it means gall or bile, poison, wormwood. Okay, so after learning the meaning of pale and seeing that the pale horse brings something poisonous, I remembered how they portrayed this guy in that movie, the Left Behind series, Nikolai Carpathia. He was holding a vial of green serum. So Nikolai Carpathia, the Antichrist in Left Behind movie, is holding up a syringe with this green serum. And you'll notice that the actor who plays Nikolai looks eerily similar to Trump when he was young. I mean, very eerily similar. And then I said here, looks eerily similar to a young Donald Trump. The green serum is obviously a hint about Trump's snakebite poem. Now, we know that Trump told this poem back in 2020, or no, it was 2016 or 17. And at the time when he read this poem out loud, we thought it was about vetting illegal immigrants. But later on, during the year of the scamdemic, I figured it out. I said, now I know why he read the poem. He was speaking in code. And you know how the QAnon people are always saying that Trump speaks in code. Well, guess what? Daniel's prophecy says that the little horn understands dark sentences. Well, when you look up that Hebrew word for dark sentences, kidah, it means a puzzle or a riddle. Well, Trump is always speaking in code, including reading the poem called The Snake and the Woman. Well, it says here, a new study published in the Journal of Clinical Investigation has identified a snake venom-related enzyme that may be the cause of related mortality. So now we get it. Trump is the pale green horse as well. He's the one that brought in the pale green horse. It was then that I remembered that Trump's poem that he recited at a lot of his rallies was giving us a hint that he's the snake. He's the one that would develop the poison. Okay, so the cycle of Sagittarius ended on December 21st, 2020. And this was the same day that the Gallup poll results were submitted and Trump was hailed as the most admired man. The results of the poll were conducted between December 1st and the 17th in 2020, with 48% of Republicans naming Trump as the most admired man and 32% of Democrats naming Obama. This was also the same day that Trump announced that the poisoned bow and arrows were the great Christmas miracle, thus fulfilling this prophecy. 2 Thessalonians 2:8, and then shall that wicked be revealed, whom Yahuwah shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. 2 Thessalonians 2:9 says, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders. Okay, so here's the tweet. The tweet was on December 21st, 2020. And this is what he said. Distribution of both shots going very smoothly. Amazing how many people are being given the V. Record numbers. Our country and indeed the world will soon see the great miracle of what the Trump administration has accomplished. They said it couldn't be done. Okay, so this was his statement on December 21st, 2020. The same night that the astronomers were saying that the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn was the great Christmas miracle. Then on December 24th, Trump said it again, calls it a Christmas miracle in his holiday message. Okay. Then again, on December 29th, Trump ends Obama's 12-year run as most admired man, Gallup. Okay, so 12 years in a row, Obama was counted the most admired, but Trump beat that on December 21st, 2020. But they reported it on the 29th in this news article. But December 21st, 2020 is when Trump was announced the most admired man. Okay, and so the next cycle of Capricorn began on December 22nd, 2020, which revealed the two-horned goat of Revelation 13:11, which is the United States of America under Trump. President Trump's last day in office as POTUS was January 19th, 2021, which was the last day of the cycle of Capricorn the goat. Now, Trump, I believe, was revealing himself as Apollyon. Okay, you got to see this blog called The Mystery Behind the Insurrection at the Capitol Dome, because most people don't really understand what was going on that day on January 6th, but a lot was taking place. A lot of satanic black magic was taking place. And I'll cover that maybe in a little bit, but let me finish this first. America operates, like I said, under the two-party system, Democrat and Republican, which is just like imperial Rome, and also as a church and a state, which is what Constantine, the Roman emperor, brought in. A church and a state. I believe that's what Trump's going to do. I believe when he comes back, he's going to introduce a church and state. I believe he's going to restore America back to Roman Catholicism. That's what he's going to do. Not restore us back to our righteous roots, but restore America back to what ancient imperial Rome was. Okay? America, I believe, is the second beast of Revelation 13:11. It says that he exercises all the power of the first beast of Revelation 13:1, which is the Third Reich of the Holy Roman Empire. I believe that America is going to be a repeat of Nazi Germany during World War II, just like Pope Pius and Adolf Hitler. But the 10 European nations that Nazi Germany conquered, I believe that those 10 horns are coming back together again. And we're told in Daniel that after World War II, the United States of America was the 11th horn that rose up after the 10 horns of Europe. That's Daniel 7:24. So right after the 10 European horns that Hitler conquered, another little horn came up after, and that one was America. Because, see, in 1945, the United States of America led what is called the Big Three. The Big Three was an allied agreement between Britain, Russia, and the United States, thus fulfilling Daniel 7:24. See, Daniel 7:24 says, and the 10 horns, which I believe are Hitler's European conquest, and the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them. That's the United States of America. And he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. Well, in August through September of 2020, Trump displayed himself as the he-goat, a repeat of Alexander the Great. He subdued 3 nations. Trump also had Qasem Soleimani killed, and thus he dealt a deadly blow to the 2-horned ram, which is Media and Persia. That's Daniel 8:20. However, modern-day Iran, Iraq, and Syria represent Media and Persia. And this is what Daniel 8:20 is referring to when it uses the name Media. Okay, so here, the little horn destroys many with a peace agreement. Daniel 8:25. The Abraham Accords has a clause that all of these nations have to cooperate with the V. The distribution of and the development of the V. So that's how he destroyed many with a peace agreement. Daniel 8:25. When you look at the coin for the Abraham Accords, and it's got Donald John Trump's signature on it, you can see what's on this coin. This is a scimitar, an Arabian scimitar, which is a symbol of war. And then you see a heart monitor, because lots of people are developing myocarditis. You see the syringes, you see the satellites, you see the gears, right? The gears having to do with technology. You see the computer code, you see the satellites.
That computer code could also represent crypto.
Yeah.
Ones and zeros blockchain.
Yeah. You see Space Force, which he launched in 2019. You see the dove with the olive branch in its beak. In other words, a false peace. And right after that, you see Saturn. Saturn is the planet that represents Satan. Okay, so the whole coin tells you pretty much what is going on here. Okay. The 3 nations who signed the Abraham Accords with Trump are Israel, United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain. Now, since then, more nations have joined: Sudan, Egypt, Morocco. But in Daniel 8:5, this prophecy was already fulfilled once in the past with Alexander the Great. But you see, prophecy has a habit of repeating itself, right? History repeats itself. In Daniel 8:5, it says, and as I was considering, behold, the he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Now, this is really interesting. The word notable is this Hebrew word hazut, and it means a compact or an agreement. The Hebrew word for horn is keren, and it means a trumpet or a trump for short. So the Hebrew hazut keren means a trump agreement. Isn't that fascinating? So the goat that had the notable horn, you could read this as the goat that had the trump agreement between his eyes. Okay? And do you see, this was the Abraham Accords that Trump formed with 3 nations, 3 kings. Since the original signing of the Abraham Accords on the Feast of Trumpets in 2020, other nations have joined. You've got Egypt, Jordan, Sudan, Morocco, and Oman. In Daniel 8:6, it says, he came unto the ram. The ram is Iran and Iraq. And the ram had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. Okay, so let me explain this prophecy. The United States of America, I believe, is the he-goat. We began warring against Iran in the 1970s. The United States also attacked Iraq during the Gulf and Iraqi wars under the 2 Bush presidents. President Trump finished the job when he defeated ISIS by having Soleimani killed. Okay, now you have in Daniel 8:7, and I saw him come close unto the ram, and he moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and broke his 2 horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Now, I don't believe that Trump is done with Iran. I believe that Trump is going to come back, and between him and Putin and probably the Ukraine, they're going to form an alliance, and they're going to put Iran in their place, and that's going to enable them to build the temple, because I think that Iran is the only thing that's standing in the way of them building the temple. Okay? So that's what I think might happen. Okay? Daniel 8:8 says, therefore the he-goat waxed very great. You know, the he-goat is America under Trump. And when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. Now, the 4 notable horns are the 4 horns of Zechariah 1:18 through 21, which are Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, and Medo-Persia. In other words, the nations that joined the Abraham Accords are these same Middle Eastern nations with whom Trump formed the alliance. In Daniel 8:9, it says, and out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great towards the south and towards the east and toward the pleasant land, which the pleasant land is Israel. Okay. The United States of America will become a world superpower again under Trump. Right now, America looks like it's dying a deadly wound under Biden. You know, our economy is on the down spiral, right? In fact, in many countries, the dollar is only worth 50 cents. But I believe that Trump's going to do the same thing that Hitler did. He's going to come back, and he's going to create the Fourth Reich of Nazi Germany, which is like a revived Roman Empire, which will be like a revived Babylonian Empire under Nimrod. But I see Trump as a repeat of Nimrod. I see him as a repeat of Nebuchadnezzar, a repeat of Alexander the Great, Antiochus IV, Nero Caesar, Charlemagne, Napoleon, and Hitler. I see him as all of these former dictators all rolled up into one. Okay, as a matter of fact, I've been able to find all these terms at Antichrist Calculator. President Donald Trump equals 666. The V word also adds up to 666. And we're told that the beast has a number to his name, and he gives people a mark that is the same numerical value as his name. So come on, people. If his name adds up to 666, and if he's the father of the V, which also adds up to 666, what else can you call that? Obama didn't do that. King Charles didn't do that. But the guy who has the numerical value of 666 for his name, and he developed a V that has the same numerical value as his name, how do you not see that? I mean, it's so plain right here in Revelation 13. It says, and he causes all. It doesn't say he forced them. It just says he causes, right? Because he didn't force anybody, just he influenced. He causes, meaning he influenced both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond to receive a mark. That word mark is charagma, and it means to scratch or an etching or a stamp, a badge of servitude. But it comes from this other root word, karaso, which means to puncture, okay? And it says in the right hand or in the forehead. Well, that's coming. That's coming. First, it was the V, which alters the DNA. But there's another thing that's going to be coming that's also going to be an augmentation to what started, okay? And so that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So the mark has the same numerical value as his name, okay? So Obama's name does not add up to 666. King Charles III does not add up to 666. But this guy, the same one who developed the V, has the same numeric value as the actual mark that he is claiming to be the father of, okay? So what other thing can you make of this, okay? Now, when you look up mark of beast, it also has the numeric value of 666. Trump is Antichrist. That adds up to 666. Trump is Nimrod. That adds up to 666. Trump is Assyrian. That adds up to 666. Trump is Roman. Trump is Judas. Now, Judas is the son of perdition. Our Messiah called him the son of perdition, which means destruction. Trump is he-goat, just like Alexander the Great. That adds up to 666. Trump is Pope. Now, the reason I say that is because I have a friend who had a dream, and her dream really rings true with me because so much of her dream is what I've been talking about. But this friend of mine had a dream in January 2021, and she wrote to me, and she said she prayed before bedtime and said, Father, show me who Trump really is. And she had a dream that night that Trump came back as POTUS and that he had all of his political enemies killed through either execution, firing squad, hangings, and he did it in public, like these public executions in big stadiums, and people were cheering, just like in the Roman Colosseums when they did these, persecution of people. Now, some of these people probably deserve it. Many of his political enemies will probably deserve it, but just because he gets rid of the cabal, it doesn't mean he's a good guy. It just means he's getting rid of the cabal so that he has nobody to compete with. He wants to be the only world ruler, so he eliminates his competition. It doesn't mean he's a good guy, but people are going to think he's a good guy because he's eliminating the evil cabal and the child sex traffickers. Okay, it's going to make him look like he's a good guy because he's defeating these people. But in this friend's dream, she said he finally brought up charges on the Pope. And I'm assuming that she meant Pope Francis, right? And everybody knows Pope Francis is a pedophile. And he even wears the pedophile symbol on his garments. Pope Francis was seen at Jeffrey Epstein's mansion when Jeffrey Epstein was supposedly still alive. I don't even think he's dead personally. I think he's probably in hiding somewhere. But in her dream, she said that Trump had Pope Francis killed. So it's possible that Trump could step into the role of a pope. I mean, the word pope means papa in Latin, which means father. And if he's already calling himself the father of the V, and people are buying these T-shirts called Daddy Trump, I mean, he owns the copyrights on this, right? They've got pictures of Trump that say, Daddy, I love Daddy Trump. Trump is my daddy. This one says, best dad ever. Come on. Trump owns the copyright on that. He doesn't let anything get sold with his name on it unless he gets a, royalty from it. He even sued a guy who wrote a book called The Last Trump, like Paul the Apostle wrote in 1 Corinthians about the last Trump. He sued a guy for using that name, The Last Trump, and he won. And the guy had to change the title of his book. Okay, so the point being is that Trump has 318 copyrights on so many different products, and every product that has his name on it, he gets money for that. Okay, so you can imagine that Trump might step in as the Pope and become a Pope of the Holy Roman Empire, just like Charlemagne did. Charlemagne was a king of France. He didn't start out as a clergyman. Usually, popes start out as a priest or a cardinal or a bishop of the church, and that's how they ascend to the position of a pope. But Charlemagne didn't start out that way. Charlemagne was a political strategist. He was just like Trump. He was somebody who was a military guy, a military strategist, a conqueror, someone who brokered deals. That's what Trump is. So I can see how Trump could end up being like another Pope Charlemagne, right? And like I said, the name Pope means daddy, papa, father, okay? Trump is Nebuchadnezzar, also adds up to 666. Trump, the Prince of Grecia, 666. Trump is Nero, adds up to 666. Trump is devil, 666. Trump is Satan. Trump is serpent. Trump is Amalek. Amalek, okay? You remember the Amalekites? Yahuwah told Israel, that they were not to suffer the Amalekites to live. When King Saul captured the Amalekites, he was told by the prophet Samuel to kill everyone from the Amalekites because they have such a deep-rooted hatred towards Israel. And he said, wipe them all out, even children. Well, King Saul, out of his greed, kept the king of Amalek alive. And because of that, Haman came from that union of the Amalekites. And later on in the Persian Empire, Queen Esther and her cousin Mordecai had to deal with Haman because he was a descendant of the Amalekites. Well, Trump is Haman. That also adds up to 666. Look, I've put other people's names in there, and nobody else's name does this like Trump's name. It's mind-blowing, okay? Also, Donald is a Scottish name, which means world ruler. Trump means horn, okay? Donald Trump is a negotiator. He's the military strategist. He's a builder of towers like Nimrod. Okay, and I described that in this blog, 14 biblical identifiers of the little horn. Donald Trump magnifies himself more than any other political leader in the world. And I talk about that in this blog, Trump's Merovingian royal bloodline. Daniel 8:11. It says, yea, he magnified himself even to the Prince of Hosts, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Now, this word magnified is the Hebrew word gadol, and it literally means to twist. It means to honor in pride, to advance, to boast, to lift up, to magnify, to promote proudly, to tower, to tower. Isn't that interesting? Daniel 8:12 says, and a host was given to him. That means an army was given to him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Daniel 8:13 says, then I heard one Kodesh, that means a saint, one saint speaking to another Kodesh, a saint, said unto that certain Kodesh, which spoke, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot. In Daniel 8:14, it says, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Well, the word day, yom, is not in this passage. It doesn't say 2,300 days. Okay, usually if the word day is there, it's going to have the Hebrew word yom. It actually uses two words there, evenings and mornings, ereb and boker. Thus, this actually says that the transgression that causes desolation will last for 2,300 evenings and mornings. Now, when we divide this sum in half, it amounts to 1,150 evenings and 1,150 mornings for a total of 2,300 sacrifices. Now, 1,150 days divided by 30 gives us a total of 38.33 months. This was precisely the length of the tribulation in the kingdom of Judah in the days of the Maccabean revolt, when Antiochus Epiphanes desecrated the temple in Jerusalem for little more than 3 years. So this prophecy of the 2,300 days is actually 1,150 days. It's not 2,300 days. It's actually a total of 2,300 sacrifices. But since they do 2 sacrifices per day, it's describing 1,150 days of sacrifices. Okay? And this was exactly the length of when Antiochus Epiphanes desecrated the temple. So in the future, the total length of the Great Tribulation will last a little bit longer, 42 months, which is 4 months longer than the days of the Maccabees. In Revelation 11:3, it tells us that the 2 witnesses will prophesy for 1,260 days. That's a total of 42 months. This is the same length of time that the beast speaks blasphemies in Revelation 13:5. However, in Daniel 12:11, we are told that from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away and the abomination that makes desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. This means 30 days longer than the tribulation for the 2 witnesses. Okay, so I believe this is because after the 2 witnesses are killed and then they're resurrected and taken up to heaven, there shall be an additional 10 days of tribulation for Smyrna. You know, that is in Revelation 2:10. They have to suffer tribulation for 10 more days, and yet another 20 days for the Jerusalem temple to remain defiled. The resurrection of the corporate 2 witnesses, otherwise known as the bride of Messiah, will take place on the Feast of Trumpets, and we know this because the moment they are caught up to the heavenly throne, which we see in Revelation 11:11 and also a Revelation 11:15 and Revelation 12:5, the 7th Malach, or the 7th angel, sounds the 7th trumpet. That's the 7th month of the year, because we're commanded to blow the shofar at the beginning of each month. So the 7th trumpet means the 7th month of the year. That's the Feast of Trumpets. This means that the temple shall remain defiled until after the Feast of Tabernacles. This explains why our Messiah is going to have to rebuild the tabernacle of David when he returns, according to Amos 9:11 and also Acts 15:16. See, our Messiah told us precisely when the Great Tribulation begins. In Matthew 24:15 through 21, he says, when you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. So there's people on social media claiming that the tribulation already began when Trump rolled out the the V in December of 2020, citing that the human body is the temple. Well, that's true. The human body is a temple. But as I've said, prophecy usually has more than one layer of fulfillment. It pertains to the physical and it pertains to the spiritual, because heaven and earth are still here. So when our Messiah said that one jot or tittle shall in no wise pass from the law and the prophets until all is fulfilled, he said, until heaven and earth passes away. So we still have the literal fulfillment of prophecy, and we have the spiritual fulfillment. The spiritual fulfillment of the abomination of desolation has to do with the V contaminating the human body and altering the DNA. I agree. I'm one of the first people to ever, bring that truth out when I created that graphic. But there's also going to be a literal fulfillment. There's going to be a literal brick and mortar temple. There has to be, because we are told in Revelation 11, it says, and there was given unto me a rod, and the Malach, or the angel, stood, saying, rise and measure the temple of Elohim and the altar. So the temple and the altar, okay, and them that worship therein. So the angels told to measure three separate and distinct things: the temple, the altar, and the people, them that worship in the temple. So this is obviously not describing a human body. We don't have little people walking around on the inside of us worshiping. Come on. That's just a goofy way of trying to, interpret this prophecy. I mean, it's just goofy for people to think this is describing a human body. Because it says, but the court which is without the temple, and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months. So if we're to believe that the temple is only the human body, that means 6.6 billion people who took the shot are going to be in the outer court, and we're going to be trampling on their bodies for 42 months. Now think about how goofy and ridiculous that sounds. Okay? That is totally ridiculous for anybody to believe in that. And besides, restrictions on buying and selling have not begun yet. We have not begun to see the martyrs being beheaded for the testimony of Yahushua on a global scale. We haven't seen that yet. Sure, we saw that news reporter getting his head chopped off by ISIS, James Foley. We saw that, but we haven't even begun to see it on a mass global scale yet. Okay, the two witnesses haven't even begun their evangelistic outreach to the world from Jerusalem. That's going to happen. We're going to see that. And so there's been many other biblical citations and proofs that there's going to be a brick and mortar temple during the Great Tribulation. And I talk about that in this blog. These are the beginning of birth pains. 12 reasons why the Great Tribulation has not begun yet. And I have the 2-part, or I think it's a 3-part series on YouTube that I recommend you going back and listening, because there are so many people claiming that by next April 2024, that's going to be the end of the tribulation. And they're saying that the Messiah is coming back in the spring of 2024. I don't see that happening. There's still too many things that haven't been fulfilled yet. Anyway, yeah, so December 21st, that was, according to the occult world, according to the Mayan calendar, they claim that that was the rebirth of the false Messiah, what they would call, the Antichrist. And so I really recommend that you go and look at this blog called the Capitol Dome Insurrection, because when you read that blog, a lot of things are going to make sense. Things that took place at the Capitol Dome that day. Why did Trump invite his followers to come to the Capitol Dome on January the 6th? what was it about January 6th? Well, you see, January 6th in the Catholic Church is called the Feast of the Epiphany. The Feast of the Epiphany. And what most people don't realize is that that's when they claim that the wise men came to Bethlehem to visit the Messiah, was they say it was on the Feast of the Epiphany. Okay? Well, January 6th, I don't believe he chose January 6th just by accident. I believe it was chosen to align with the Feast of the Epiphany, when the Magi, the wise men in Greek and Latin is called Magi, which means magician, right? They visited the Messiah in Bethlehem. Well, in the fifth degree of Satanism, it's called MAGA, which, in Latin it's magus, but in English it's called MAGA. So it means magician. Now, Marina Abramovich, that spirit cooking witch, she actually said in an interview, and you can hear her saying it right here, Marina Abramovich says Trump is the magician.
I just to share with you one really funny opinion. But there is in Lapland, there is a group of the shamans there who do something called collective dreaming. They will go together in seclusion and do the rituals with eating very little food and being in a solitude for a long time, and they will go and dream the dreams. And the dream have to be collective, same dream. So coming out of this dream, once of the shaman told me that actually the best thing happened in this planet right now is the Trump to be the president. I said, how is this possible? It's the best thing to happen. He said, yes, because he's so irrational, he's so crazy. That's actually create that awakening that we finally wake up. Because before it will be another guy and everything looks similar, but he's so different than anything else. So he's the magician who waking us up. What do you think about that? That kind of theory.
So she actually says that Trump is fulfilling the role of the magician in the tarot card deck. And she said that he's bringing in a new age of enlightenment to wake us up. Okay, so what Trump was doing on that day is that he was allowing himself to be reborn as the Apollyon. Because what we watched when we watched that documentary called The Belly of the Beast is that at every presidential inauguration, the president stands under the Capitol dome and he's facing the obelisk, which the obelisk is supposed to represent Nimrod's uncircumcised phallus, and the dome is supposed to represent the womb of Isis, okay? And they believe that there's these satanic people that are praying underneath, and they believe that the spirit of Osiris, or the spirit of Apollyon, which is the Greek counterpart to Osiris, is Apollyon. They believe that spirit is going to take hold of that president, but they know it's only going to stick with one president. The final president, the last president, this magic ritual is going to stick to him. Well, I believe that the reason why Trump invited his followers on January 6th is because there's not going to be another election. And I believe that when he did this ritual under the dome of Isis on January 6th, that was his inauguration, and that he beat Biden to the whole inauguration, and that he was displaying himself as the Epiphania. You see, the Greek word Epiphania means God manifest. That's actually what the word means. Antiochus Epiphanes gave himself the title Epiphania because it means God manifest. And this word Epiphania actually has the numerical value of 666 in Greek Gematria. So the fact that Trump invited his followers on January 6th, the Feast of the Epiphany, I believe that was his inauguration. And he beat Biden to the inauguration. This was all planned out and scripted years and years and years before, probably 50 years before it happened. by the Illuminati that Trump was going to do this January 6th thing, and he was going to make himself look like the Messiah because, you know, our Messiah was falsely accused of insurrection, and they're making it look like Trump is falsely accused of insurrection, and they're going to bring out the evidence that, you know, the election, there was, you know, election fraud, but, you know, that's been the case since 1871. We haven't had a legitimate election since 1871. The whole thing is contrived to make Trump look like the Messiah. The whole thing is contrived. Okay, here is a little graphic I found on the Church of Satan website. Magus, 5th degree. Okay, so you start out, you're an active member, 1st degree. Witch or warlock, 2nd degree. Priest or priestess, 3rd degree. Magistra or magister, 4th degree. 5th degree, maga or magus. Okay, so that has to do with magic, magician. Okay, the liberal opposition cried impeach him, which sounds very similar to crucify him, right? Interestingly, the word for sword, as I've already said, means judicial punishment. Okay, so Trump, I believe, right after he survived the impeachment, right after that, they made an image to Trump. They made a golden statue of Trump after he survived his 2nd impeachment attempt. They displayed this image at the CPAC event of 2021. What's he got in his hand? A magic wand, like the magician, right? The magician, like Marina Abramovich already said.
Because magically he's going to go, vroom, reset. Right? Cast a little reset spell.
Right. So we've already seen a partial fulfillment of Revelation 13:14, that he deceives them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles. He survives the COVID. He survives the impeachment attempts. And then right after he survives all these things, they make an image to him, a golden image to the guy who survives the plague, to the guy who survives the impeachment attempts. Now he's going to survive the indictments. Okay? These things have all been contrived. They've all been contrived. Another thing people need to understand is that there's 3 domes that when you connect them with ley lines, they form a giant triangle. You've got the dome in St. Peter's Square, St. Paul's Dome in London, and you got the U.S. Capitol Dome in Washington, D.C. Directly across from all these domes is the ancient phallus symbol, the phallic symbol of Nimrod. You know, the Washington Monument, right? So the United Kingdom represents finance, the Bank of London, the Rothschilds. Washington, D.C. is the military power structure. The New Rome, the District of Columbia. The Vatican City is the religious epicenter of the world, the religious epicenter, okay? And so at each presidential inauguration, they're doing a mock birth, okay? You got the phallic symbol in London, the one in Vatican, the one in Washington, D.C. They're doing a mock birth, and it is supposed to bring up the spirit of Apollyon from the bottomless pit, which is Revelation 9:11. In fact, the word inaugurate comes from this Latin root word ogre, which means to cast spells, to practice magic or witchcraft. So every presidential inauguration is a spell, is a magic witchcraft spell. It's what they're actually doing. Most people don't realize this. In fact, the Hebrew name for Apollyon is Abaddon. Abaddon. I don't even think that's a coincidence that Abaddon is the Hebrew name for Apollyon, and it's Abaddon. Okay, Abaddon. That is Trump. Okay, now I highly recommend watching this video called Belly of the Beast, the director's cut. It's done by Justin Fall and Wes Fall, and Tom Horn is in that documentary as well. But they explain in this documentary the ritual that is taking place at a presidential inauguration. Okay? And so here we have Trump tweeted on August 21st, 2019. He speaks great things and blasphemies against the Most High. He said, "Thank you to Wayne Allen Root for the nice words. President Trump is the greatest president for Jews and for Israel in the history of the world. Not just America. He's the best president for Israel in the history of the world." That means he supersedes the Messiah. If he's the best president in the history of the world, that would include that he's better than the real Messiah, Yahushua. Okay?
Well, now, come on. They would say that, Yahushua wasn't a president, and they would even say they didn't have presidents back then. So they would say that's not a fair comparison.
Yeah, but the word president means somebody who presides over. So a president is the same thing as a king. He presides over.
Okay, that's fine. And they would just say that they would still say, well, of course, Jesus, either they don't believe he's the Messiah, or those who do all recognize that he came as a suffering servant. So
he says he's the king of Israel. Okay. They love him like he's the second coming of God. Okay. So Trump said this about himself. Now, some people would say, oh, but he's quoting somebody else. Yeah, so what? But, in the book of Acts, remember when they called Paul and Barnabas gods? The gods have come down to us. What did Paul and Barnabas do? Did they agree? Did they say, oh, thank you. Thank you for calling us gods? No. They tore their clothes and they said, no, we're not gods on earth. Don't call us Elohim. They were tearing their clothes. See, if Trump was really a man of Yah, he would not let anybody elevate him to this kind of position. But he's repeating what Wayne Allen Root said and calling himself the King of Israel, the greatest president in the history of the world. He's like the King of Israel. They love him like he's the second coming of God. Tell me that's not speaking great things and blasphemies against the Most High. He even called himself the chosen one. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why he did that. He knows that he's been chosen to fulfill this role. Okay? In fact, you can look at my other blog called Trump's Merovingian Bloodline, where it takes us back to his family lineage, how he's related to a long line of Plantagenet kings of England, that he's even related to this ancient king of Jerusalem called the Count of Anjou between the year 1131 and 1143. His mother, Marianne MacLeod, was a Scottish Jew. Even Yar Davidi, who is a historian, confirmed this. Trump's father's side, they belong to the 13th Illuminati family, who are the Merovingian bloodline. They believe they are direct descendants of Christ himself. That's why Trump's father was named Fred Christ Trump. His grandmother was Elizabeth Christ Trump. Okay? His grandmother died on June 6th, 1966. 666. This was the date that Trump inherited his family inheritance of $413 million. These people, the Merovingians, believe they are descended from this supposed union of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. We know that that's a lie. We know that our Messiah did not get married to Mary Magdalene. But this is what they teach. And they believe that the womb of Mary Magdalene is the Holy Grail. They call her womb the Holy Grail. They talked about this in the Da Vinci Code film. Okay, so the womb of Isis, which is, when Trump went under the Capitol dome, is supposed to be the Capitol dome. If you turn this dome upside down, it looks like a cup, like a chalice. This is what they call the Holy Grail. Okay, the womb of Isis. But, in Catholicism, it's the womb of Mary Magdalene, which they believe that the holy Jesus copulated there. So therefore, her womb is holy and her offspring is holy. So they believe Trump is from this union, that he's supposed to be the Holy Grail. And, this is all explained in the Da Vinci Code. I even did a blog where I decoded the Da Vinci Code, and I show that Trump is part of this Merovingian bloodline. So that really is all I've got for today, but I urge you guys to prepare yourself and educate yourself, because this great deception is coming upon the whole earth. And right now you've got detractors, people saying, no, the Antichrist is Obama. No, it's King Charles. But nobody wants to believe it's Trump. Why? The Jews see him like he's going to save Israel. The Americans see him as he's going to save America. So nobody wants to think it's Trump. It's too easy to believe it's Obama. But Obama's not fooling anybody. Everybody sees Obama for who he is. But Trump is fooling a lot of people. And so he's the one that is the great deception. And so I urge you to take a look at these other blogs I've done. Look into his Merovingian royal bloodline. Take a look at all the evidence that I've compiled for the last 3 years, and your mind is going to be blown. But whatever you do, don't be deceived, because it's coming. And I believe pretty soon we're going to see Trump getting arrested. And everybody's going to think that, he's the poor persecuted martyr. That's what they want you to think. They want you to feel sorry for him, because it's supposed to evoke some kind of emotion, where it's supposed to make people just feel so outraged because it's so unfair. And so many people are going to want to rise up and riot in the streets over how unfair this is.
Right. Everyone wants to defend those who have been falsely persecuted and who are being victimized.
Mm-hmm.
Support the underdog. So
yeah,
it's purposeful.
Yeah. So Trump was already presented by the world of the occult on December 21st, 2020. When they announced that conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, that's what they were telling us, that Trump is the one. They were telling us on that date that he's the one.
Yahuwah bless you and keep you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. We hope you've enjoyed today's broadcast and that you are encouraged in your walk with Messiah. For more teachings, subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified of our latest content. Visit Maria's many blogs at doubleportioninheritance.com. That's doubleportioninheritance.com. This ministry is made possible by the prayers and support of listeners like you. To make a donation by PayPal or Venmo.com, use the email address doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. That's doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. On behalf of Maria and Gary at Double Portion Inheritance Ministries, may Yahuwah bless you.